Okay, hi. So real quick, I just want to explain Gnostic Docetism. So it was called a heresy by the Orthodox Church. Docetic or Docetism refers to that which seems to be or what only appears to be. And it comes from certain concepts discussed in some of the Gnostic scriptures. Books like the Acts of John, the Gospel of Peter, where it seems like Christ is not really suffering. And because they have a very literalist way to read the scriptures in the Orthodox community, they take this very literally and very seriously, attributing to the Gnostics a literalism that they do not claim for themselves. And so then they pronounce this as heresy, assuming that they believed that Christ, being the Word made flesh, wasn't really in the flesh. And there's some really interesting ways to express reality, I suppose. There's some different ways to view reality. I don't think any of them are really right or concrete, because we just really can't grasp reality in our human condition. But they did have ways of describing things that are not necessarily literal. And in the Gospel of Peter, which they call docetic, there's one example why this book was rejected. Not only for Christ appearing not to suffer, and this is just a matter of speech, right? You can make a person suffer, but in their heart of hearts or their soul, if they know what they're doing or they know that the suffering is temporary or is illusory in some way, they don't truly suffer. It's a way to assert that conquering spirit that we have to overcome. So that's what they're kind of getting at, not necessarily taking 100% literally. But here's an example from a passage from the gospel. It says, and the heads of the two. So this is at the resurrection when they go and there's two angels leading Christ out of the tomb. They roll the stone away. And it's mostly given this narrative that's pretty consistent with the other gospels. But all of a sudden it gets really ethereal. It like turns into a vision with symbolic language, right? And it says, and the heads of the two angels reached the heavens. And the head of the one they led by the hand reached beyond the heavens. And a voice was heard from the heavens saying, have you declared unto those who have fallen asleep? And the cross proclaimed, yes. And this has been described by some scholars even as, this depicts a walking, talking cross. It mentions that right before this, it mentions that the cross followed after them. Now we know it's not really rational to believe that the cross was buried with Christ. That just would not happen. And it's not really rational to assume that the writer, whether it was Peter or this was written down from an oral tradition from Peter, whatever, thought that the cross was actually buried with Christ. So we're not describing exactly what happened as from an eyewitness account. We're trying rather to express something, which is what the Gnostics did frequently. And they expect you to take a step back and interpret what's being said, not literally, but look for a deeper spiritual meaning. So the cross following after, maybe it wasn't expressed just like that originally. We might have just a copy of a copy again and maybe changed a little bit, but maybe describing that Jesus is dragging his cross, right? And just to bring us back to the idea that pick up your cross daily and follow me, that this is what Christ did for us. He bore his cross. And so here he is in the act of triumphing over it and still bearing his cross in his resurrection. So he's carrying the cross. The heads of the two reach to the heavens. Are they giants? Because that's what some people talk about when they look at this, that suddenly these these angels are giants and the resurrected Lord is giants. No. If their heads reach into the heavens, this creates the sense of exaltation, right? These are exalted beings. They're angelic beings. Like your head goes into the heavens, the bosom of the Father to be crowned, right? And Christ being resurrected is exalted beyond these other exalted beings. So to be crowned, his head reaches the heavens. And it's just a poetic language, right? And the voice comes from heaven saying, have you declared unto those who have fallen asleep, have you preached your mission to the world, right? Did the cross literally speak? Or does the existence of the cross and the mere fact at what happened speak for itself? Right? That's just a way to interpret that, not creating a cartoon-like version of events, but just expressing something. So again, it's not disproven, it's not false, it's just poetic, right? And then there's truth in it. So people used this scripture, they read this scripture, this book, and at some point, somebody interpreted this very literally and said this is heretical and that Christ didn't suffer. Therefore, the book is heretical and should be discontinued to use it. And then, therefore, it couldn't be from Peter and it must be a forgery and so forth. So that conclusion is not necessary with the key to understanding. And so we find the same concept discussed in the 4th surah of the Qur'an. That it says seemed to be that Christ died, but you can't kill him, right? He's immortal, right? His spirit's immortal. All of our spirits are immortal. You can't die. Death is an illusion. We say these things and there's a truth to them. It doesn't mean that you won't experience physical death, but even the physical death you experience is in some level, illusion, because it seems to be permanent and real, but we will find out one day that none of this is as real as we think it is, right? All of the material world, we're going to wake up into a world that's way more real than this. And this may seem like all a dream. So that's what they mean. And that's, they call these people docetics, but did they really take it as literally as is attributed to them? Or were they Gnostics? And Gnostics have a tendency to interpret things not literally, to look for deeper spiritual significance, to be more the spirit of the word and not the letter of the word. So something to think about. You don't have to reject it on a literal reading. You can find the truth in it and apply it to what you believe spiritually or what you're following from the Spirit and interpret by the Spirit.